How's it going, everybody? And welcome to this next edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking with Jibowu. He is the founder of Varlo Apparel. I assure you, you probably have seen people such as Jason West, and Trevor Foley, and Cody Beals wearing their race suits and apparel. In the podcast today, just have to say, I am so fortunate to be able to do this. It is amazing getting to talk with all these founders and professionals. And today's conversation is no different. It left me feeling so grateful. We talk for an hour and a half. It's a little bit longer, but it is such a good podcast. I would encourage you to listen to all of it because we talk about Saj in his growing up in Nigeria. We talk about him being a Division I track and field athlete. We talk about the incredible loss that his family felt when he lost his mom when he was in his mid to late 20s. And then we talked about the founding story of Varlo and so many other things, and so many good pieces of information as it relates to life advice, business advice, even marriage advice. So if you have a chance, please listen to all of it. I hope you enjoy this episode. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Jibowu. Well, hey, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
It's been super neat to kind of record more and more of these episodes, and originally it was quite a bit of like professional athletes and stuff like that, but I have my heart set in entrepreneurship from a young age, so getting some of you founders on here to hear the stories of how you've done what you've done is something super exciting, so I look forward to getting into it with you.
Awesome, man. Very cool. Excited to chat. Excited for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Let's rock and roll.
All right, sounds good. So the first question is, who is Saj? And I think, is that how you say your first name?
Dodge, yes.
Saj. Okay.
And you said it really well the first time. I always, whenever people say my name right the first time, I take it as they must have heard it from someone else, so they know exactly how to say it, right? And they don't say Soj or sewage or whatever,
Yeah,
I don't know. No, I don't get offended by it either at all. But man, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a regular guy who decided one day to follow his passion
Sure.
in sport, in business, in bringing value to people, and maybe mixed with a little bit of like crazy, stubborn determination,
Yeah.
hard work, effort, and all that stuff. Here I am, but
Yeah.
that's it in a nutshell, man.
Yeah, I'd say there's got to be some of that stubbornness involved because from what I read, I think that before you started this company, you did 60 different triathlons. Is that right?
I did 60 races. I was
Races.
like 60 like road races, 60 everything, like anything that you could think of, I was
Yeah.
involved in pretty heavily. And then just triathlon, just I loved it. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. I remember seeing my first race in Chicago. I was I don't know how far I was out of college. I was a D1 track and field athlete. I was a 400
Mhm.
meter runner. And in track and field, if you run the 400, you're touted as like that person, like, oh, you're a 400 runner.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Chicago to visit a buddy, and we're not far on Michigan Ave, not far from Lake Michigan,
Okay.
and there was a triathlon going. I didn't know I didn't know what a triathlon was. There was like bikes that looked really cool and people that looked fast. And
Yeah.
I walked over and watched, and I was like in awe, man. Like watching the people. So I didn't know how to swim, but
Yeah.
watching athletes swim, get on the bike, and then sprinting, running what was it? It was an ITU event, so
Okay,
whatever
so it's
distance
draft
that is.
legal pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. It was absolutely insane. And I said, man, I want to try that out. I gotta step into that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we'll jump into some of that. I want to get some of your back history, but I want to go back even further first just to get some a little more context. So, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, man. I turned 41 in January. January
Nice.
25th. Yeah.
Oh, so it's coming up.
Yeah,
Was
man.
it hard turning 40? Was that any sort of a thing?
No, 40 wasn't hard. 40
Yeah.
was like 40 was easy. My wife threw me like a surprise party at like
Nice.
this restaurant we like to go to. But everything they say about like you starting to feel certain things in your body, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not that's so spot on.
Yeah.
and it's so spot on, man. And I don't get to work out and train as much as I used to,
Yeah.
and it's catching up to me, man. Like the movement isn't as like as swift as it
Yes,
used to
it's
be,
fluid. Yeah.
So that you do feel that part.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that you're right now in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in that area, or where are you from?
No, so I was born in Nigeria. I was born in Lagos State,
Okay.
Nigeria, and then moved to the UK, moved to the States. My parents went here for college.
Okay.
So I moved to the States at a young age when I was 7, Huntsville, Alabama. They were students at Alabama A&M University.
Okay.
They became teachers, moved to Michigan,
Okay.
where I went to a little bit of junior high, high school. Central Michigan, ran track and field there. Lived a little bit afterwards, so did a good amount of growing up in Michigan, roughly like, I don't know, 18, 19 years.
Yeah.
And then moved to the East Coast like 8 years ago. Like eight,
Okay.
9 years ago, 9, 10 years
Okay.
ago. Yeah.
So, what's your favorite place to live so far?
Man, I love the East Coast.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the East Coast, man. I really, I truly, truly do. It's like it's a melting pot
Sure.
of thought, of food, of people.
Mm.
Um, it's like 6 hours to Europe and 6 hours, like about 6 hours to California. Like let's
Yeah.
5.5 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, and then also you're like the proximity to other states and clusters of people is like undeniable. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you hop on a train, you're in Manhattan in like an hour,
Yeah. That's not bad.
hour 40 minutes. DC, Baltimore,
Yeah.
you can be in Boston in no time, you know. So that proximity to people, to culture is just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It's interesting that you mentioned getting around by a train because I live more in the country, so it's few and far between that I get on a train. But my greatest experience on trains has been when I've been in Asia, and the bullet train system is something that I
uh
wish we had on the U.S. in the U.S. to be able
yeah.
to get around quicker and a little bit more efficiently than flying because that's
Oh yeah,
awful.
yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
trains. I didn't know about the train system until I came out to the East Coast, which was I
Mm.
was living in Michigan, but I for work I was like a regional manager in the med device space, and so I would
Oh,
travel
interesting.
here, and it was easy to go from like, oh, I need to go to hospital in Baltimore, and I need to get around. I would just take the train,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, this is nuts. Like this is I was so new to it, and I was like, this is so cool because you get on a train and it's you have all this space, you can get work
Mm-hmm.
done.
Yeah.
Um, and living in the Midwest, you know, that just wasn't really a
Yeah.
thing, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you said you moved from Nigeria to UK. I think when you were 7. Was that like a hard transition at 7?
no, man. Like, I have a lot of family members in the UK, and
Okay.
actually, so I moved to the UK and then moved to the States. So I moved to the States when I
Okay.
was 7,
Oh,
and so
okay.
I don't remember a whole lot of the UK. I think it was like a hot spot before we
Yeah.
came over to the States.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I don't remember a whole time, but I still have family there. I have uncles there, cousins. You know, we still chit chat and
Yeah.
talk and all that good stuff. You know,
Yeah. Do you visit quite frequently?
not as much as I would like.
Yeah.
You know, I do visit. You know, are you married? You married?
I am married. Yep. 6
Okay,
years almost.
6 years. All right. So like, I'm married. My wife is Portuguese, so I visit Portugal.
Yep. That's how it goes.
You
Follow the
know how it
wife.
goes, right?
Yep.
I go to Portugal. I go to Brazil often. You know, like
Yep.
you know, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
that.
And you said you had siblings or you don't? I can't remember.
Yeah, I got two younger siblings. I got two
Okay.
younger brothers. I'm the oldest by quite a bit. Like
Okay.
so I'm 40. My younger brother just under me is 30, and then
Okay.
I have another brother who is um 26. Yeah,
Okay.
so you know, we're definitely spread out for a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. So are they working for Varlo?
Yeah. No, man, they do their own thing.
Yeah.
I was like begging my one brother to work for Varlo because he was living in Philly for a hot second. I was like, oh, you should come here. You could we could do all this stuff, and then it didn't work out. He was with you know, his current girlfriend, and they were moving to Texas, and
Okay.
I get it. You know, I didn't want to. I was like, you know, you guys go do your thing.
Yeah.
But my daughter who comes to the office, you should see her when she walks in. You would think she does work here. She
Oh,
like
really?
comes in, she goes to the kitchen, she like grabs a little snack.
How old is
And
she?
she's about to be 5. My daughter's gonna be
Okay.
5 in December,
Mm-hmm.
and my kids, my son, the same thing. Like Varlo and my daughter specifically, with my son too. But there's so much, there's a lot there, man. There's
Yeah.
my daughter, before she could read, knew what Varlo was,
Yeah.
because I would say, oh, say Varlo, so, and she would say, oh, Varlo, Varlo.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was Lake Placid. I don't remember how old she was, but
Yeah.
I remember her first like experience that Varlo was, because she thought Varlo was dad. She's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
dad's
Yeah.
Varlo, right?
Yeah.
And I remember her first experience where she was like, wait a minute, like everyone's wearing Varlo. Like what is Varlo, right? And
Yeah.
her kind of like taking it in and absorbing it. And
That's cool.
it's really cool. Now, she'll watch like YouTube or TV, and she'll say, oh, there goes Jason, like Jason West. Or
Yeah.
she'll say,
Yeah.
oh, there goes Cody, Cody Beals. And
Yeah.
she walks in the office and she names people. So it's really cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, that's super neat. So I'm curious, just a little bit, dig more on who you are and the kind of your background. What were you like as a kid, and do you find any similarities between you and your kids now?
Yeah. Yeah. So as a kid growing up, I was probably, I'm a lot like my daughter. My daughter and I are, I would say, fairly similar. I was
Mm-hmm.
a probably rambunctious kid. I wasn't the greatest student. I was not the greatest student. I think I was like probably like a C student. I was just definitely a C student.
Sure.
And then but always into sports, always active.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love the idea of like what your body can do, like to
Mm.
me is like remarkable. Like that's like its own thing. Like, oh, like, and I was always that kid, like, I wonder how fast I can run from here to there.
Yeah.
I wonder, like my thing was like how tall could I jump off of stuff? So like
Oh
if I
wow.
get up here, like can I jump off of it? Can I
Classic
get up
boy.
here
Yep.
and you know? And my daughter is she's a lot like that. She has that kind of like wild, wacky personality,
Sure.
My son is, how would I describe him? He's cool. He's like too cool. Like he's really, really like, you see him when he walks around the house, he like doesn't he like bumps you and like keeps walking. Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 2. He's 2.
He's giving you the shoulder
He
already, huh?
already, man, like he'll walk up to you and like hit you and then just keep walking. And you're
Oh my
like,
goodness.
what? And then you go look at him in the living room and he's sitting down with a yogurt with his legs crossed, like and it's
He's
like,
got
what?
swagger at 2 years
Like who
old.
is this kid? Like,
Yeah, it's funny.
it's really he's it's yeah, he's probably more like my wife. Like my wife is way more I would say my wife is way more of like an East Coaster, like she's more of a an East Coast, whatever you want to call it, like personality.
Yeah.
I'm probably way more Midwest than East Coast, I would say.
Yeah, more chill. She's got a little more sass, it sounds like.
She got a little bit more sass, and she'll tell you what's up.
Yeah. Yeah. She'll lay it out flat. Yeah.
She'll tell you what's up, man. Like she doesn't hold back.
Yeah. Where did you guys meet at?
We met, like, so I was working for a company and called Pentax, and she worked at that company as well. So we technically met through that, and then we you know I would travel, we would see each other, we would connect, and that was kind of that. Now it's really funny though, because I always say that, like, I remember when I first met my wife, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm Portuguese, and I was like, oh, that's cool, I'm Nigerian, let's keep it going, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you know like I can speak some Yoruba, like the traditional language, like
Yeah.
son
Your mother
Yoruba
tongue.
dada, right?
Sure.
But like that's I can hear it and I can understand it.
Yeah.
I remember going to a dinner or lunch or something with her and her family, and I was sitting there and no one spoke English. It was all Portuguese. Mind you, everyone could speak English. So
Oh,
it
tough.
wasn't that they didn't know how to speak English. It was just that, nah, like we speak Portuguese at the table, and and it wasn't like, oh, like, that's the guy, he speaks English, like please speak English for him. It was like, nah, like, you didn't know, no, whatever. So that was however long ago that was, man. I started learning Portuguese, and now we speak Portuguese fairly, okay in the house, and um, it's a language that I've learned to love, appreciate.
Yeah.
When you travel, you gotta. I definitely believe that when you travel, wherever you go,
Try
like
to adapt.
try to adapt. Don't you know, when you travel, definitely try to adapt, or at least just, I think it's courteous. It shows courtesy. It shows common courtesy to at least try some
Sure.
of the language or the culture and wherever you're going.
Yeah.
I think that people really, they take that, they give thanks to it. Like, I don't, do you speak any other languages?
I can understand Spanish and un poquito, but it's like really
Okay.
small. Yeah.
Okay, yo hablo pequeño español. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Very small.
Próximo tempo. Next time you go to like any Spanish speaking place, ask for the restroom in Spanish. When you
Yeah.
order your food, try to order it in Spanish. You order your drink in Spanish. And I guarantee you that experience will go so much further from the simple truth and fact that you tried, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't got to get it, just got to try.
Yeah. They love it.
Yeah, they love it. I'm sure you'll get, your drink will be nice, your food will be extra nice. They'll throw in something extra.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess respect and that you have for other cultures and stuff, is that something that you grew up with or something that you've honed over time, you think?
No, I think it was definitely growing up. I was born in Nigeria,
Sure.
and I grew up in a house where people, you spoke Yoruba. We ate traditional food, um, and you grow up. I'm an immigrant in that regards, right? Like the way I grew up, what I
Sure.
saw, what my experience was, it's definitely that of an immigrant. Like when you when you're not born in a country and you move to that country, no matter what you look like on the outside, you're not from that place, right? So
Right.
there's certain things that you're trying to adopt, you're trying to assimilate, you're trying to get by on, and you may or may not struggle, right, with that. And so um for me, it was always comforting to see other individuals who were also maybe going through that same thing, right? And they were also immigrants, and so they were also trying to fit in, whether it
Yeah.
be to a new school or to a new whatever it was, right? And then also, like, mind you, like I'm like 10 years older than my like younger brother, so it
Right.
was a lot of just me for a long time while my parents were in, going through college and all those things. So I got to watch and kind of assess like how they navigated in the US as adults, right? Like my
Yeah.
mother, she worked like three jobs,
And go to school?
Hardee's, Shoney's, and Taco Bell. And my dad worked three jobs as well. And granted, they spoke English. They spoke English fairly well. Like they
Sure.
weren't like, they knew how to speak English, but they had their thick accents. So watching that, um, you just, you just, you know, and it's, you can't, that just sticks with you, right?
Yeah, sure.
That sticks with you. But it also, what sticks with me is like watching the work and effort they put into
Yeah, that ethic.
everything. And my mother, when she passed, like, this is a woman who moved to the States. She went to community college, went to college, got her master's, started working on her
Hmm.
PhD. By the time she
Wow.
passed, she was finalizing her PhD.
Wow.
So I got to observe that and see that firsthand, vividly. And even as an entrepreneur, I say, man, like, I think immigrants are like the real entrepreneurs, like
Yeah,
they
talk
leave
about
their
bootstrap.
home,
Yeah.
they start all over, and navigate new worlds, So,
So who are you more like, your mom or your dad?
oh, good. I'd say I'm like a mix. I'm a good hybrid. My dad is he was way more militant, I would say,
Yeah.
like way more traditional militant. My mother was way more, I would say, loose, very warm, very welcoming, and big smile, like
Yeah.
always like big
Very
bear hug,
welcoming. Yeah.
But I would dare to say that I'm probably a mixture. I definitely have a lot more characteristics of my mom in that regards. I am warm, I am welcoming, and all those things.
Yeah.
But I can definitely, there are moments where I'm like, ooh, that's my dad, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably the very direct side of me, which is on whatever matters are super important, right?
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, it's, you know, I am, it's a calculated quantitative assessment on how you do things. I probably
Yeah.
get that from my dad.
Yeah. For sure. So you said your mom went all the way to do her PhD. What was she studying?
My mother was a special education teacher. She did studies, and I think I know she wrote her thesis on inclusive environments for learning disabilities, like
Hmm.
children with learning disabilities. And I know that because we had a word processor at home. My mother was not a good, like, she couldn't type. So I
Typist.
would type all of her papers for her. So
Oh, seriously?
she would write them and I would
Got
type
your
them.
PhD too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so I remember vividly it was, that was her thing. She was a special education teacher and her biggest focus was like inclusive environments for children with learning disabilities in
Yeah.
environments with students that were not challenged.
Yeah. May I ask how she passed?
It was cardiac. She had like really bad cardiac
Mm.
conditions, and so
Uh, yeah.
yeah, really unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. That's tough.
Yeah, it is tough, man. It was she had cardiomyopathy, left
Mm.
ventricular cardiomyopathy,
Mm.
which is like inflammation of the heart. Muscles get too big,
Yeah.
not pumping out enough oxygenated blood in the system.
Yeah.
So
Was it expected or was it not?
it wasn't expected. We knew that she had like a form of like heart failure, but it wasn't
Yeah.
at
You
the
can't prepare
time.
for
It
that.
wasn't like, oh, on June 16th you're gonna.
Yeah.
That was definitely not expected,
Yeah.
um but yeah, like she was I was talking to my daughter about this because my mother's name was Francisca and my
Okay.
son's name is Francis. And they're like, oh, tell us about, Grandma Francisca. And I was like, oh, she was like this and she was like that. My mom was
Oh, that's so
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
She was great. She was an amazing woman. She was also an entrepreneur of herself because while she was working on her PhD, she was a baker, like crazy, crazy baker. You would have thought like, oh, she's like the baking person, right? Like
Yeah.
she's. And so every holiday for Christmas, for birthdays, anything like that, her little side business was that she would make cakes for people.
Oh,
And
cool.
so she was like, oh man, I wonder, because she had a shop. I remember it was on the corner of Weiss and Tittabawassee in Saginaw, Michigan. There was a shop there that she was looking at potentially purchasing
Mm-hmm.
and opening up a bakery, and she never did. She like, I was like, I don't want to do it. And so, but yeah, she was also like a little bit of an entrepreneur at heart, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The apple doesn't fall from the tree.
No, it doesn't. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I want to move past that too quick. I lost my dad when I was 16, so I know like that can
Oh,
throw a life full of wrenches and things.
yeah, dude.
Yeah, so I'm 31 now, and every year it kind of comes back around, and you got to re-deal with it in a new way, in a new light. But I feel like it has over time turned into almost an advantage of sorts. So I'm curious, do you
Yeah.
feel like that it's edified you and who you are as a person now?
Yeah, man, 16 is very young.
Hmm.
So to give you like a scope of reference, my younger brother, when my mother passed, my younger brother was 16.
Okay.
I was 26,
Okay. Yeah.
26, 27 when my mother passed. So I was out of college. I was,
No more stable.
um, I was working, and living life. And 16 is that age where, you're deaf, I don't know, maybe you almost got your license, or you're getting your license or something
Yeah.
like that. It's a very, pivotal moment. And
Hmm.
so, yes, that is young. You're going through a lot at that time. Um, do you have siblings?
I do have two younger sisters.
So you're the oldest, yeah?
I am the oldest. Yep.
Yeah. So for me, when my mother passed, I was so when my mother passed and everything was going on, like I didn't shed a tear until
Wow.
I was we were in the vehicle. I was by myself. I was in the car with a couple of aunts and uncles. My brothers were in another car. we were leaving the funeral, the gravesite. We just buried her. We're leaving the gravesite. That was when I cried. That was my first shedding of a tear. Like I bawled.
Yeah.
And the reason is that, it took me some time to like, what was going on? And when I remember when I came home, when I got home and I was assessing what was going on. Okay, mom's in the hospital. Da 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 da. It was immediately like, you know, big brother mode. Like make sure my two younger brothers were okay, right? I remember taking them grocery shopping like 2 days afterwards just to kind of set some type of normalcy pattern in place in the house. I remember talking, you know, going through like college application stuff with my brother, you know, and it was all of that, like, how do we just keep things moving in the house, right? I remember moving into the house and being in the house, and like my baby brother, I think it was like 2 weeks I slept in his bed, like with him, like rubbing on his back, right?
Yeah.
So I remember going through all that, and so I probably didn't have time I didn't have that moment to like sit back and go, okay, what just happened, until way after the fact.
Delays it,
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that, because 16 that's a tough age, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't prepare at any age, really, even when someone, I think, has like something like cancer. I've seen people go through that as well, and you try to prepare, and there's just, I don't think we're meant to experience death, really. It's just like, it's such a hard thing.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard, man. It's so hard. And what you know, it's really interesting. My brothers have had colleagues who, and maybe you can speak on this. My brothers have had colleagues who, and friends where they've lost, you know, loved ones, and they've lost parents. And it's really interesting to see that the life experience that you get at such a young age on how to manage loss and manage some of the hard lessons that life can, you know, present to you, right? You know, life is not, it's definitely not fair, and it's necessarily not easy at all. But I think you may agree with me on this, is that when you go through those challenges, and as hard as they may be emotionally, there's lessons, and there's things that you learn that, you know, kind of like imprint themselves on you, right? Because the given on life is that challenges will continue. Like there's going to be harder things that are going to happen, you know, like there's going to be, you're not just going to have one loss, you're going to have multiple losses in your life, right? So you start to learn how to manage and how to navigate those situations, you know?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, nobody wants to experience that at a young age, but I feel like because of that, like you were saying, you were the oldest?
Yeah.
So it's like you automatically fall a little bit into this role of almost co-parenting, not really, but sort of, like the siblings look up to you. And then so for me, it like was like, okay, I'm 16, and now I feel like I'm supposed to be dad almost, because I was the only male in the family at that point. So it like really stunted me trying to figure out how to grow, and I wasn't a good father figure, and I had no idea how to even be that. But I will say, now that I've gotten older, you know, I started to make friends who were much older than myself. I think because of their life experiences kind of brought up the level of understanding to a little bit different. Not to like toot my own horn, but I just liked having deeper conversations, and like we went through stuff that, you know, maybe a little bit more of assimilation. But at the same time, you lose some of that childhood. So in therapy, I've had to go back and be like, okay, how do I finish growing younger Seth?
Like, I continue doing what I was doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I still want to be young.
Yeah. No, good stuff, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's super,
of course,
deep stuff. So with the other side, your dad, what does he do, or what did he do? Because you said he went to college as well, right?
Yeah. So my dad ended up, he was a teacher as well. He's retired now. My dad's retired. He's chilling. He's hanging out. And you know, my dad was an athlete, and my dad was like it's funny because I look at like pictures of when he was younger.
Yeah.
And he's tall. My dad's like 6'4" or something like that, 6'3", 4. And he was the guy like in college that had his like shirt unbuttoned like right here, and his like chest was out, like, you know,
here
like,
I am. Yeah.
Here I am. Yeah. You know, like this like big sideburns, you know. But my dad's doing good. Like he, you know, it's funny. He came to visit not long ago with his brother, my uncle, who lives in the UK.
Mm.
And, I brought him around like the Varlo office, and he was like in tears, like, oh my goodness, like, just, pride. And if your
Yeah.
mom could see this, and,
Yeah.
so on and so on. But like, it's, he's, my dad's a good dude. He says I got a lot of my athleticism from him. My mom used to say the same thing, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
That she used to. She also gave you that athleticism,
Yeah,
or
they both did. Oh yeah, you
yeah,
got
yeah,
your athleticism from me. It's like,
yeah,
oh
yeah, yeah,
okay, yeah, sure, whatever,
yeah.
Right now, but I mean, listen, I'm 40 years old, and I'm definitely not running 400s right now. I'm not.
You look super good. I would not have guessed 41. I thought you were a bit younger.
No, dude, I'm definitely 41.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get up, like when I have to get up from this, it's gonna be
Yeah,
like
and
a
you,
slow,
yeah,
oh,
get the
I'm
walker.
definitely 41. Well, it's not. I'm not even 41 yet, but my mind has already adopted that I'm
Yeah,
41,
here I am.
and you know, yeah, man. I mean, it's. I think looking young at now at where I'm at in life right now, looking young, like I don't know if it does me any favors. Like it's not like, oh man, you just got, but whatever. I take it. I still get, I'll take it. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah, you get the look of wisdom. We'll take it.
Yeah.
So I want to go to the athleticism part because running for Division 1 and the 400 track and field, like that's nothing to shake a stick at. And I don't know the up and coming of how that all works exactly and how you got involved in that. But talk me through, I guess, if it started in middle school to high school and then, all right, I'm going to college to
Yeah.
run
No.
D1 track.
It's really funny, man. I had this weird view about athleticism and sports with youth, right? So for
Oh, yeah.
me, I was always involved in sports from a young age. Like I played soccer at a young age, and I remember running track in middle school and soccer and all that good stuff. But I didn't actually like I was never ever in like a hyper competitive environment until I was like a junior in high school, right? Before that, it was always like, oh, maybe I will, maybe I won't run track, maybe I'll play soccer, maybe I won't play soccer, right?
Yeah, just do kind of what you
But
want.
I was always involved. I was always involved. And then I remember my junior year, um, it was like, hey, we're gonna put Jibowu, because like that was everyone, Jibowu, get Jibowu to run whatever event, right? Put Jibowu in the quarter mile, put him in the quarter mile. And so I remember running the 400, and everyone's like, whoa, like what did you just do? I was like, oh, I just ran. They're like, no, you didn't. You just ran a 49 or something. And they're like, can you do that again? And I was like, yeah, let's see. And that's when I was like, oh, I think I'm good at this. I think I'm okay at this.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
then senior year, same thing happened, set some records, won our high school, whatever they called it. I don't know if it's in high school, it's like Division A or whatever it is, championship for state. And then like colleges, I had the interest of colleges. And mind you, I was not a good student. So I was not this student that was like, I'm going here for school, I'm going here
Yeah.
for school. It was simply like, oh, there's this guy that's in, Saginaw, Michigan, that's really good at track. Let's see if we can get him to our college.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was like my like ticket for people to be interested in me. And
Yeah.
then and it's really funny because I had all these colleges that were interested in me, and I didn't go to them. And you're gonna laugh at this, right? So like University of Michigan, Michigan State, I didn't go to
Wow.
those schools because they didn't have a good track program. Like that was my like reason. They don't have a good track program. I don't want to go there. Like they're not good. And so I ended up going to Central Michigan, which is D1, but like um
Yeah.
and then that was that, man. Had an amazing D1 career. Again, set some records, won some conference championships,
Sure.
all that good stuff. And in retrospect, I've had like a couple of like I've had interviews, and I've talked to like MHSAA, Michigan High School Sports Association or something.
Okay.
And we've talked about like sports, like high school sports and collegiate sports, and like why is it so good for youth to be in sports? And I would say like the discipline factor that you get in sports at that age is immense. It's incredible.
Mm.
And there's certain attributes in life lessons that you learn when you're involved in, whether it's high school or whether it's like junior high or even definitely at the collegiate level. There are certain life lessons that you are granted or that you are exposed to
Mm.
via sports that you're not going to get them unless you're just not. And those are things such as, like, for me, and speaking specifically of me, it's how far can you push yourself mentally? How far can you go? What does hard work look like? What does teamwork look like? Um, what does effort, emotional IQ, emotional
Mm.
intelligence of assessing yourself, right?
Yeah.
Those are all things that I think I learned through sports. Now, physically, I would say that, like, if you look at like kids that are, if you look at kids that play like, did you ever play baseball?
I didn't. I'm so bad. It's not even funny.
Okay. So you ever, like, you see, like, you ever watch like Little League World Series, right? And there's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
these kids that are like Little League World Series kids, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like pitchers, right?
Yeah.
Like the like 99.9% of those kids will never play like in like
College level or.
college level, right? They're not, and it's because they get burnt out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a big proponent of, with youth, let kids be kids.
Yeah.
Let them, allow them to explore physical activity, allow them to learn, allow them to find what they're passionate in. But I think you should moderate the intensity at a young age,
Mm.
um, until they're in a position where their bodies can truly like absorb what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, let that happen. And not only will they go further in the sport, but you allow them to like enjoy it, really enjoy it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's why you do it rather than the performance aspect.
Yeah. And it's also like with youth. I remember with soccer, I was a big soccer fan. You ever read like Malcolm Gladwell? He has this book called Outliers.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen
Okay.
to it. Mm-hmm.
Big, like, I'm a huge fan. I remember reading that, and I remember like reading it and then immediately assessing it. And I remember one time I was watching like this like youth. I went to, because I was a big soccer player, big soccer fan,
Sweet.
and I remember going to this like this youth tournament, and I remember like there was like, at the age, it was like 12, like U12, and at 12 years old, you have all these kids that are 12 years old on the field, but then like you have some kids that are like super duper short, and then you have some kids that are like a foot and a half taller, right? Because they're all these things
Yeah.
are going
Everyone's
on.
growing.
And at 12 years old, like that type of like height advantage or build advantage is a big deal. Like, it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Like, if like, especially like with basketball or any type of like physical activity,
Yeah.
your size determines a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would always assess with youth in sport was that, allow them to build, allow their bodies to do what their bodies are going to do, and always pay attention to the kids who are able to compete, the kids who are able to function at a high level, but yet may still have like a perceived size disadvantage.
Mm.
Because eventually when those kids do develop and they grow or their muscles develop, the one thing that they're going to have is they're going to have a mental IQ of the game or the sport that
Yeah.
they've had to develop
Mm-hmm.
in a situation where they weren't the fastest, right? Or they
Yeah.
weren't the tallest, so they couldn't jump the highest. So what did they do to navigate around that, right?
Yeah.
Pay attention to those kids, because as they develop, dude, like, those are the kids that they'll do amazing things,
Yeah. They'll
right?
change the game.
They'll change the game. Yep.
Yeah. I was recently talking with a guy. Do you know Tommy Zafaris? Zafaris?
I've heard of them.
So he's like a photographer, but he also works for as the. I think he's the director. Don't quote me on this, for talent ID for USAT. So he's looking at high school and college level people's times and stuff, and like trying to bring them into the development program to eventually go to the
Okay,
Olympics.
so I'm like, why did I hear of this name? And it has nothing to do with Project Podium.
Maybe he's pretty connected. I don't
Okay.
know.
Anyway,
But he does a lot of like WTS filming and photography, mostly photography. Did Collins Cup stuff. and also with Super League some. Anyway,
Okay.
he was sharing kind of some of the stories. I was like, oh, they need to connect with you, and then they can have like another level of competitive advantage for knowing how to pick the right people. Yeah.
Oh, oh
Um,
man.
yeah, man. So tell me about the inception. Well, I guess first, because you're an entrepreneur, I'm assuming Varlo wasn't your first business, or
No,
was it?
no.
Okay. So tell me about some of the other ones that kind of led up to the point of when you start Varlo.
So I was before Varlo, I was employed. I worked for I was in the medical device space and pharma space for like 16 years, 17 years about.
Yeah, it's
I
a long
was a sales
experience.
rep, then I was a market manager, then I was a regional manager. I was all these roles, right, in that space. And definitely got to like build that business muscle, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that
The
muscle of
acumen. Yeah.
assessing business and acumen, all that stuff. And then on the side, I was in real estate. Like, so I would look at properties, I would buy properties, I was never into the flip game. Like, I never
Yeah.
had like the time to flip,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But I was always in the real estate. Like, oh, what can I buy? What can I buy? What can I buy? What, what's the market? What can it rent for? What can it rent for? Or whatever. And and then I dabbled as like a photographer as well.
Oh, sweet.
So fun fact, go to Varlo Sports, all those images I shoot, right?
Oh, sick.
So
That's awesome.
I always dabbled in photography, and I had like a photography business on the side where I would shoot for people, whether it's engagement shoots and
Yeah.
um, birthday shoots and all that good stuff. And so that, I mean, the photography thing was like more, I'd say more hobby driven. And then
Sure.
like, but the real estate part was fun. I love real estate. I think real estate's great.
Yeah.
Um,
It is. I enjoy it.
I think it's great. And so with Varlo, I remember I remember a few things that were happening with me at the time before Varlo came, and I was working for a startup company in the med device space,
Right.
and the company was called Vure, which is still around. Um, um, I'm forgetting his name, the founder of the company right now. He's gonna
What's it
kill me.
called? View Ray?
Yeah, Vure. Dempsey. Why can I not think of his? He is. If he hears this, he's gonna. I'm so embarrassed. Ooh. Anyway,
I'm like looking it up as you're talking it.
I'm so embarrassed because he's gonna be like, you don't remember my name. Anyway, Jim Dempsey. Oh my goodness. Okay, so
Okay.
Jim Dempsey. The I worked for a company called Vue. I was on the emerging procedures side, which basically is the side that thinks plans. How do you bring businesses to market, right? How do you bring
Yeah.
products to market? How do you launch it, roll it out? Vue was, if you look at like radiation delivery for cancer patients, Vue is the first company to come out with like a live attenuated view for soft tissue upon radiation delivery.
Hmm.
So that way you could see what's going on with soft tissue as you're delivering the radiation,
Wow.
which is like a new way of thinking about radiation treatment.
Yeah.
Whereas, previously and even still now, when you deliver radiation, the dose has to be really, really low. So you have all these fractions where you'll go under like how long is your chemotherapy? It could be like 30 days, 60 days, whatever have you. With Vue, and also having like that live MRI guided view of the soft tissue, you can assess, you can draw a board around it, deliver your radiation,
Wow.
and then you can increase the dose to have a shorter duration, more efficacious duration of radiation delivery. So really, really cool stuff, fun stuff. It was, a blast. It was fun to talk about it,
Yeah.
present it to health institutions, IDNs, all that good stuff. And I remember sitting with Jim. We were hanging out, and this is Jim. He's the founder, CEO, creator of Vue, and I remember we were sitting down having a couple of drinks, and when you work at a startup company like that, you're sitting next to like geniuses, like
Yeah.
you have access to them. It's not like you work for I'm gonna say Novartis or a Pfizer or a GlaxoSmithKline or a Johnson and Johnson, where you may not ever meet the founder of that medication, right? Because they're somewhere in Switzerland or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're in a startup environment, you get to actually interact with like the founders. And for someone like that, who I would just say is brilliant, I
Mm-hmm.
remember sitting down with him and we were having dinner, we were having drinks, and I said, "Hey, dude, we're talking like, yo, what up, dude? Like, I get to call him dude."
Yeah.
And we're talking about just all things. He's asking me questions that you're asking me, and I remember him saying, the only difference between me and my colleagues that are physicists and who went to med school and so on and so forth is I had an idea and I did something about it,
Yeah.
you know? And that just stuck in my mind. It really did. And I remember him saying, you will do yourself a disservice by knowing what your passion is and never chasing it.
Mm.
And that disservice is in the fact that you will never understand truly what you're capable of. You
Yeah.
will live this earth, you will be here, and you will understand what you can do, but you'll never understand what you're capable of if you never chase your passion. And that to me was like, oh man,
Planted a deep seed.
it was there, man. And I've always had this passion for sports, athleticism. I've always had a passion for um, what clothing does to you. I remember growing up and I knew what type of day it was based on what my mom wore that morning. I was like, okay, it's a Taco Bell day. That means that it's going to be a long day. I'm going to have to wait at school before she picks me up
Yeah.
or whatever, And I just, to me, that was how I could assess what was going to go on. And clothing was always a big deal.
Sure.
And so, it just, and in triathlon, I was involved in triathlon as a participant for like 7 years before Varlo. And I remember being able to go to races, look around, and kind of assess what was going on. And I knew that, man, the sport is so young. It's like a 40-year-old sport. It's so young, and there's so much innovation. There's so much potential for innovation in the sport, and not innovation by technical innovation. Like there's watches that can tell you what you should eat now. They tell you how much you weigh when you go to bed, when you wake up. They can probably tell you what you dreamt last night, literally what kind of dreams you're gonna have. There's like watches, like there's a watch for everything.
Yeah, it's wild.
There's bikes that can tell you what your power output is. They can tell you what there's like barometers on them. They can tell you everything.
Yeah.
But the innovation for how you connect with people in the space, I just thought there was like, I go, man, there's something there, right? Yeah. There's something missing. And the data suggests that something's missing. So there's opportunity to do this right. And that led me to just keep digging down the rabbit hole.
And then you decided just one day, I'm going to make this apparel company.
I'm going to quit my job. This is it.
Yeah.
No, man, it happened like small. Like it was definitely like, okay, because you ask yourself questions. All right, well, I wonder how do you make apparel, right? Like what's apparel made out of, right? Like what would you do different in making this piece of apparel? Okay, well, what would you call it? Oh man, like what would I call it? Like why would I call it that? If you made a company, what would that company do? What would it feel like? What would people who heard the name of the company, what would be the feeling that they would get from hearing it, right? Okay, like you start asking yourself all those questions, and then you ask yourself questions, you start coming up with answers, right? And then the more questions you have, the more answers you have this idea, and then this idea becomes like, okay, like, well, you start putting things into action, right?
Yeah.
And it was that, man. It was that's the best way to describe it for how it happened. And it was questions first. It was never ever I'm gonna build a company. It was all question driven, and like how would well, what would you name it? Okay, well, what letters would you use for naming it? Okay, why would you use those letters? how many syllables would it be? Like,
Mm.
what would the feeling be? And you start writing down feeling aspect, right? And for me, again, in this little bit of time, I've told you about my background, I've told you about my history, I've told you about, I guess, who I am as a person, and everything that, as I asked myself questions, I started putting more and more of myself into that, right?
Yeah.
I think when we talked, the first thing we talked about was my name, Saj, and the fact that you said it right. Believe it or not, with Varlo, the one thing I said was, when people see the words, they have to be able to pronounce it.
Pronounce it correctly. Yeah.
They have to immediately be able to pronounce it. And it has to be able to travel from one ear to the next seamlessly,
Mm.
because it has to be easy to transfer from one person to the next. Because the minute a name for anything is like hard to pronounce, it becomes it's taxing to want to even say it, right? Which includes like words that are, or anything that is like two words, right? Like, oh, it's two words. People just shorten it. They don't call it like Louis Ferragamo. They just call it Ferragamo. They don't
Yeah.
call it like, um, they don't call it like Louis Vuitton. They'll just say LV, or like,
Mm-hmm.
Louis or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so whenever you think of like naming something, that's just like one aspect, right? But um, and yeah, I mean, I can, the rabbit hole was deep with everything, like the colors to use, the branding, the messaging, what it was that the brand was going to do, right? It was all like every little thing was like purposely,
Meticulously made.
meticulously detailed, right? I mean, and there's like there's still like our like day one principles on the company, like what the company's going to do. Like even to this day, it's like, okay, when we find ourselves in positions where it's like, okay, we have to make a decision, we go back to like those principles that were like etched in like week two, and we make our decisions on those principles, and
Yeah.
that's how we go.
So Varlo, what does that mean? Does it have a meaning?
Yeah.
Does it have a specific etymology?
Yeah. Varlo, derived from valor, to have courage in the eyes of adversity, to continue pursuing for tomorrow while not knowing what's there.
Nice.
You
So
know,
what are these key principles you were talking about that the company kind of had at inception that it continues to carry out throughout?
yeah, like never do anything that's not scalable, right? And these are more business
Yeah,
based, right?
that's fair.
Um, so never do anything that's not scalable. Um, if you're going to do something, make sure you can do it more than once, right? So anything that we do, can we do it more than once, or can we just do it once? If we can only
Mm,
do it once, then we probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
yeah,
And if it's not scalable, it doesn't sound like something we should be also doing in
yeah,
the first place, right? And then most importantly, does it drive value? Like, do people see value in it? Like,
yeah,
we, me, my company, my partners, the like, we are obsessed with value. And by value, meaning what is it that you want and how do we deliver it to you? That's number one. That is everything. Like, what people are looking for and what their needs are, that matters more than anything.
yeah,
And are we the company that can provide that? Like, so that value based offering is, we obsess about it. And we obsess about it so much, believe it or not, that in the very beginning, I'm in our office building, like
yeah,
our office space, but when I before, it was the size that it is, and it was like much much smaller. It was me and a whiteboard, and that was it. There's
yeah.
still no clocks in there. There's no clocks, and like no one knows
Really?
what time it is. It's Varlo time. But there was this whiteboard, and I drew on the whiteboard, "We do not sell clothing. Like, we don't sell clothing." And the reason behind that, obviously, if you go to varlosports.com, you'll find clothing that's for sale.
Sure.
But it was not to focus on that. Like, focus on
The culture.
the culture, focus on what we actually are meaning to do, which is to empower every single person to conquer their goals for tomorrow. That is everything. And that to us is it's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Interesting. So you came up with this. If you need to take a pause, go for it. Yeah.
No worries. Signed DHL.
Okay,
Thanks,
nice.
man.
Love it. Um, so when did you start the company?
The company, gosh, we officially started sales domestic internationally. Website turned on in 2020. That was September 2020, and then
Interesting time.
yeah, right.
I'm sure that
And
wasn't
then
planned.
but the company was probably like a year before that. There was things going on, right? Like the name was there, the branding was done.
Yeah.
We had iterations of the website. There was prototypes of product. Things were already like 2 feet in. The boats were already burned before
Yeah.
that date of September.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason that September timeline is so important is in September we knew that we were just about to enter Q4 of the year, the calendar period of the year, and it was almost like a do or don't time. It was like, okay, you know, this is the time where we do it. It has to be now.
Yeah.
And the reason is that it was a roll of the dice that, well, maybe in 2021 we will have all the time in Q4, Q1 to market heavy, even though the marketing or the market is out of season, out of season. But we had 6 months to basically market everything out of the brand, like guerrilla marketing, guerrilla marketing, guerrilla marketing. And from there, it was okay, go into 2021, both feet down and just racing as fast as we could,
Yeah.
knowing that this COVID thing was going on. And COVID was like the reset. It wasn't like Varlo's going through COVID or
Yeah.
company A's going through COVID. Everyone was going through it.
Yeah.
The only differentiator was that you had people you had a company that was like entering hopefully out of it, and it was kind of like I hope this is gonna stop. I
Yeah.
hope this is gonna
Yeah.
I
Hope the
hope this
world
is
gets
gonna
back to
slow
some
down.
normal. Yeah.
So that was kind of the, I don't know, like the roll of the dice at that time.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about like the manufacturing the product. How heavily involved are you in that aspect of the business?
Pretty heavy. Like it's the how do I say this, right? Like me as like in my role, like CEO, founder of the company, I don't. It's not like I'm sitting on some place and there's like a bunch of like gnomes and people who are like
Doing what
getting
you
things
want.
done,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I'm very much in it,
Yeah.
and definitely not removed from manufacturing, design, all of those things. Now we've grown to a point where a lot of tasks and duties are delegated.
Yeah.
So that way, of course, I can't do everything. So there's my business partners,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's staff, there's people who get things done in certain aspects.
Yeah.
But with like manufacturing, there's still like a process with building the merchandise plan, assessing the merchandise plan, forecasting. I say this, which is we operate under the rules of any business that is out there. It's like, we operate under the same rules that Coca-Cola does, or I don't know. Whoever makes your headphones. Who makes your headphones? I don't know. Sony,
Audio Technica.
Audio, whatever that company is. We operate under those same rules that any business does, which is that's driven by a P&L, it's driven by forecast, and it's driven
Yeah.
by decision making that is based on favorable outcome, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah. 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 What do you
yeah.
tell me about the first time you had to make a purchase order and like you've got this ready
Oh,
and you're like, okay, this is pulling the trigger.
dude, it was I'll never forget, and I sometimes make fun of it. I'll share something with you that I don't think I've shared on a public forum before.
Love it.
But I remember, and this is like super duper personal. It's like super like I think only people in my inner circle know about this,
Oh,
and
I'm
I've
honored.
only shared it with them like when I was like in that moment, the stars were aligned. But I'm in a place right now where I feel comfortable sharing these aspects of the early part of the
Okay.
journey. I was there was this moment where I was like, okay, you know, whenever you're starting something like a business or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can like get into like planning overload where all you're doing is planning, but eventually you're gonna have to like do something. Like
Yeah.
something has to get done, right?
Yeah.
And that do something part was invest in the website, invest in the online infrastructure, also invest in product, right? So that came, I remember, and I'll talk with you about hard figures, but I remember going, okay, and I'm sitting down with my pen and paper, and I was like, okay, how much is this going to cost? And I was like, okay, this is going to be like $20,000. And I was like, all right, okay. And so I was like, and so I remember going, all right, I went to go talk to my wife, and I was like, hey, I think, and mind you, like Varlo is still like at that point, it's like I don't even know what it is. It's
A
just like
dream hobby
a
in the
dream
garage.
hobby, right? It's like a
Yeah.
basement project. And I remember going, all right, I'm going to go ask my wife that I'm going to pull 20 grand out of our savings for this basement project. And she looked at me and she was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? And so I remember my wife is in accounting. So
Oh,
so I
perfect.
remember going through everything with her, like a whole business plan. And she was like, okay. I remember going to our bank, our savings, our master savings, and pulling the cash. And then I remember to drive down Kings Highway to this new bank that was going to be the business bank. And I remember depositing it in there and telling the lady, like, oh yeah, here's the EIN number, here's the company, and making it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember just being like, here you go, and just like, all right, let's see what happens. And so I remember all that. I remember the emotion, and actually I remember when I quit my job to do this full time
Yeah.
also, and I also remember the this is where it gets really funny. I remember the second round of 20 grand I had to ask my wife for. I keep saying I asked for it, like we're it's mutual,
Yeah,
right?
there's some convincing
Yeah,
involved when you
right.
have your wife. She's like,
So
hold on,
but I
honey.
remember going to her and like, hey, I need another 20. And she's like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
you're like blowing all of our money. What are you doing?
Oh man.
And I was like, no, and like this is what's going to happen with it. And but here's the thing, right? And I would say this to any budding entrepreneur or anyone who is thinking of pursuing whatever it is that they want to do. You you have to put yourself in a position, or you have to find yourself in a position, whether it's mentally, whether it's like I don't even know, right? But until you are in that position where you've burned the boats and there are no options and it has to work out, that is when you find out what you are capable of, right?
Mm.
That is where you find out. Look, I could have stayed. We call them in the world of entrepreneurship. We call it golden handcuffs, like the golden shiny gold, handcuffs where you're, you know, and it's nothing wrong with like working and having a job and all that. So there's nothing
Sure.
wrong with that. But in that world, in that environment, you know, you're gonna do whatever it is that you're gonna do because you like it. Maybe you enjoy it, right? But until you find yourself in a situation where you have no other options, this has to work, you're going to do everything for it to work.
Yeah.
And not that like not that it's like always a competition, but I'll speak in this manner because I come from that background. But those are the people that are like the hardest to compete against.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a rep, and I would interview, or not a rep, I was a manager, and I would interview sales reps. And it was always interesting interviewing 1099 versus W2 individuals, right? It was always really interesting. And the 1099s that were on full commission, one of the things that I always noticed with them is that they they went extra to make sure a deal was closed, right?
Yeah.
It's 5:30 at night and they have to drive 3 hours to get home. You know what they're going to do? They're going to pull over, sit down, do their routing for next week just so they can bypass traffic. And then on the way home, they're probably going to make a couple of phone calls regarding the doctors or whoever they want to see the next day, right?
Yeah.
That's the extra part that you get with someone who it has to work, right? It has to work.
The hustle.
And so, I think there's a lot of that behind Varlo, right? There's a lot of that, there's a lot of that. It really is like there's a time period where I make fun of it. It's a joke now. Now it's like silly. The joke is that like in our office, like so when I come to the office and I park my car and I leave, I always go like, oh, where's the car? I don't know where my car is. I have no idea where my car is. And everyone laughs like, oh, Taj doesn't know where his car is. But the reason is when I first moved into this office, you got like mentally, where was I? Right, I was like, it was just me. There was no one else. Varlo Massage. I was in this office. There's no windows, no clocks. My wife and I, she was pregnant. She helped me put this, this wall up.
Yeah.
This, and I would come here like at 4 a.m. to start my work day. Wow. And then I would leave at like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I got here, it was dark. And when I left, it was dark. And so when I got here, my car was the only car in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And when I left, my car was the only car in the parking lot, right? Yeah. So now when I show up, there's other cars in the parking lot, right? Yeah. Or when I leave, there's other cars in the parking lot. So of course I don't know where my car is now.
Yeah.
But that crazy obsession of like, that's yeah, man, that's what it takes. It takes that. It takes, and that's the entrepreneur part that, when I don't know, whenever you listen to like these gurus online that tell you about like, like, oh, you gotta, this is what you gotta do to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. I mean, there's some truth. There's a lot of truth to what some of those guys say, but the part that there's no way they can like voice it and they can project it and say it is that it's scary, dude. It's like, it really is. Like, I mean, imagine that you take out X amount of dollars to go put it on this like wish stream and you have how old was my daughter? She was 2 at the time, maybe like almost 2.
That's the motivation right there.
Yeah. So,
were there any times after or during in between the asking for 20 grand where you came home and you thought, honey, I don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow? Like, did you ever have any of those close, we might have to turn off the lights moments?
No, never. As far as like personally in our house or like as a company?
No, as a company. Like, and you come home and you're like, no.
Mm-mm.
That's very rare.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that.
Never. It was, there, never like, and it's, I say this like in with being humble in all aspects.
Sure.
But, I think there was a lot of like manifestation that took place in that time. And again, when you're in a position where you're like, it has to work, like it has to work. Your whole perspective and the whole, like your lens and how you see things is, how is it going to work? Not, it may not work, right? Or like, this is not going to work, or we can't do this. It's how do we do this? Or how does this get done? Or, and my background also in sales, marketing was always based off of like, how do you create more options for success? So that way you're never left with one, right? So I would never ask you for something and say, hey, hey, Seth, like, can we do this to make blah, 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 blah work? I would suggest it to you, but I would also ask like who the other 4 people are that who can help it happen, right? So in case it didn't work with you, it's going to work with someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know, like,
yeah. Well, that's a super rare thing, and I just want to touch on it for a second, I guess, kind of in admiration. But I've talked with a lot of founders on the podcast now, maybe 5 or 6, but off in the world of entrepreneurship, and it's very rare that you have someone at least from my experience, who comes into a business, you have it planned as deeply as you do, like to have the business acumen to know how to forecast and like you said, whittle down all of the chances for it not to be a success. And it sounds like because you had a lot of experience. I did read a statistic not too long ago that the statistic for or the chances of success from like ages, comparing ages like I don't know 19 to 25, and then once you hit 30 basically it like goes way up, and when you get in your 40s it's like even higher, and I think it's because of the experience.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had a ton when you went into it, but that's really impressive because
Yeah.
yeah, it's
No,
just
no. Well, I appreciate that. Like I would say, again, I'm trying to moderate my words. But
no need.
I think that we, as a company, we're pacing, right? We're
Yeah.
pacing, and we're doing what we set out to do. We're like, okay, this is working, right? This is working. Um, and then from a, but like here's something that I will say that may help balance everything that's being discussed here. So let's say someone comes up to me and they go, "Oh my goodness, Saj, like I just heard this about Varlo. Oh my God, congratulations!" And they whatever.
Yeah.
My mind immediately goes to how much work this is, right? It's like I take those. I'm literally starting to learn how to say, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it," right?
Yeah.
And "Oh, thank you. Like that means so much, you know."
Mm.
But immediately my mind goes to, do you have any idea how much work this is? Like,
Yeah.
do you have any clue, like, how much work this is? And or what we've done to get here, right? Like
Yeah.
the dark days, like the long days where I don't even want to say days because
Sometimes
there's
weeks.
there's no like time, like in entrepreneurship time doesn't exist, right? Like
Yeah.
time is a very um, that's like a construct from someone who works in a time format. Okay, I'm going to go to work from like 9 to 5, or I'm going to work from blah, 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 whatever time, right?
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship, there is no time. It doesn't exist, right? Like there are no mornings, there are no nights, there are no days. There is no time, right? Like I said, there's no clocks in our office.
Yeah. It seems to be a value.
Yeah, so like there is no time. There is just get it done. It just needs to get done, right? And so you start to assess things. You start to assess things just differently. Like you don't. I don't look at things and go. Um, I don't like. I always say like, man, one like if I had to go back to being an employee that worked somewhere, I don't know if I could ever work under a time format because if you said, hey man, you're done working at 5 or 6, I'd be like what? Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's
What do
not
you do with
done. Like
yourself?
what do you mean? Like it's not done. What do I do, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then there's like the travel component, which is and I truly believe this, which is especially in a time now where everything is so virtual, like you with advertisement, you pay Google to send people to you.
Mm-hmm.
You pay Facebook to send people to you so you can be seen, or it's very like virtual, you
Yeah.
know. My belief is, you need to go to them. Like you need to go to people. You need to go be visible. You need to be out there, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be as present as possible physically, because what I would also say that in the age of like this nuance of virtual, online,
Yeah.
e-com, whatever you want to call it, like that personal connection that you get, that is of extreme high value. And I
Mm-hmm.
see that the next 5-10 years. Um, that's not going to be something that will go away anytime soon.
Yeah. For sure. We're a very tactile human species.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure. So just a couple more questions. Do you have time for that, or do you need to
Yeah,
jump
no,
here
I'm
soon?
good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. My
Cool.
phone's blowing up. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Life of a CEO founder. So how many people are on your team now?
Up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8, 9.
Okay. Good deal. And then going forward in the next, let's say 5 years, do you have a goal of like you want this to be a certain size, or are you just going to keep crunching and there's no goal too high enough?
Um, no, I think there's definitely goals. There are definitely goals, right? Like there's I think that's not a black and white answer. It's definitely like, yeah, there definitely are goals, right? So
Sure.
I've always set goals for the brand in like, okay, this is our year goal and this is our 24-month goal. This is our 3-year goal, right? This is where we're shooting for. Um, but I don't necessarily know if I believe in setting like ceilings, right? As far as like this is the it part, like this is the
Yeah.
it. Like I don't like for me it's like I don't know if I want to even work in that type of environment. I want it to be open concept,
Yeah.
open thought, always adaptable. I want to be able to challenge my thoughts, right? Like and what like I think is possible.
Right.
Um, you know, and you got to because you got to remember like history repeats in some way, shape, or format. Like the Blue Ribbon story.
I don't, but I would love to.
Okay. So Blue Ribbon was this company that came out with shoes, which were originally like the um, tiger running shoes that were originally imported from um, Japan. And eventually they were being made here in the States with a waffle maker. And eventually that company called Blue Ribbon changed to being called Nike.
Oh, I have heard this story.
And
Yes.
then eventually that company that made shoes said, hey, running shoes by chance, have you, who was
Hmm.
making nothing but amazing running shoes, said, okay, oh, like we should make a basketball shoe, right? And eventually they said, we should make clothing for basketball. And then they said, we should make a football shoe. We should make clothing for football, right?
Hmm.
Never once did they say, oh man, like we're doing too much or we're doing, they never once said that.
Yeah.
Um, they just wanted to make great products and to deliver value, right? And I think that's the same concept of not giving yourself a ceiling on what is possible and always pursuing for what the potential can be, right?
Mm.
Um, calculated, be calculated,
Sure.
but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that answers the question. Yeah, that's great. There's no wrong answer, I don't think, for sure. So one more question. It's
Yeah.
hopefully more of an interesting one. So identity. I know with me and stuff that I've started in the past, I'd start doing something, and then who I am becomes so wrapped up in it. And it sounds like when you started this, something that actually really struck home to me was a lesson that it took me a while to learn that whatever you do, you can take who you are and like the values that you instill and create, or you kind of push them into this thing that you're creating. So it sounds like you did that with Varlo. If it was to just something happen tomorrow where I don't know, all the money's stolen, hackers take the website, it's all done. There's no way you're going back. Would that be really difficult for you identity wise, or do you feel like you could kind of pick up the pieces and do something else?
Oh, you mean like if Varlo for some reason went away, could I go do something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Of
Yeah.
course. Like I think, me as a human, like my thing is I want to bring value to people, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have this like it's not new. It's not like this like oh this like thing that Saj came up with
Yeah.
is whatever your talent is as a human being, whatever you are good at, whatever you're like, holy moly, like I'm like I really this is passion to me and I'm really good at it, right?
Yeah.
Like I have this ability that I'm blessed with to be really good at it. As a human, you are only truly as good in that talent if you can share it with others, right? Like really why else does it matter? Like if you're the best I don't know. If you're the best number cruncher in the world, does it really matter if you can't share it with anyone?
Yeah.
And no one else, like, I don't know, right? So if if my talent or my thing that I believe that I'm good at is bringing value to people and helping others and being a service to my other human beings, that's what I'm going to do, man. Like I can guarantee you in 20 years, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So
Good answer.
Probably it might be with real estate. It might be
Yeah, I was
back
gonna
to real
say.
estate.
Yeah. Real estate's fun. I've just in the past year gotten into it, wholesale real estate,
Oh,
and
nice.
we touched on a number of different levels of the real estate and opportunities out there because some stuff will
Yeah.
hold for longer, and you know how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like anyone and everyone should know how to do real estate because it's like it's not this super complicated thing, really. When it
No.
comes to business, it's pretty black and white of how to make it work. It takes
Yeah.
people skills and interpersonal skills, and you have to like get those pieces worked out. But all
Yeah.
the wealthiest individuals I know are in real estate.
Yeah, there's definitely like a common denominator on people and what their portfolio, what they have in portfolio, right? Like
Yeah,
there's, oh yeah, by the way, they're in real estate,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely, yep, I like real estate. Real estate's awesome. And then also, I think, again, for me, like, whether it's like fair housing, or it's being able to put people in a home, a place where they can call their home. It's a house,
Mm,
it's a
yeah,
building, it has four walls and the roof on it. It has this dial that you can make the room hot or cold. Um, I think there's something really cool about being able to put people in a home so they can, or in a house so they can make it a home, right?
yeah.
Like that to me is, dude, like that's like when I came to this country, we lived in this apartment complex on Broyles Avenue in Huntsville, Alabama. And I remember it was like, I don't know, it was small. It was like maybe four,
Yeah.
500 square feet. It was my mom, my dad, and myself. And I remember, I don't, we were, I don't, I would never say that, oh, I remember us being homeless. We were not homeless. I would never even want to say that that's what we did. Not, I
Sure,
don't need
sure.
props on being homeless. But like, I'm not like, but I remember going from Broyles Avenue to University Place apartments, and each place we went to, I remember like my mom like having this like sense of pride in the fact that it was just a little bit bigger, right? It was just a little bit bigger of a space. And I remember when we moved to Michigan, we were in Pheasant Run Apartments, and then I remember what she did. What she was a teacher at the time. She became a teacher, and she went back to what she knew how to do, which was working at Taco Bell. She worked in Saginaw City, and she got a job at a Taco Bell working at nights just so she could like have some extra cash to come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her coming home and she would smell like Taco Bell, and she would just be so upset, and she'd be crying, and she'd be like, oh, I hate doing this. I hate it. Like I hate cleaning
Mm.
toilets. I hate frying meat, blah, 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 blah. And
Wow.
but she was doing it because she wanted to make enough money so my dad and her can put it on a home, put a down payment on a home, right?
Wow.
It was that important to her. And so to me, I've always felt like, man, like if I can help people with living, like a place to live, that they can make it a home, they can have memories, they can have Christmas, they can have Thanksgiving, they can have holidays, they can have trick or treat, they can shovel the driveway. They could, I don't know, they could hang out in the backyard and like barbecue, right? If I could say, okay, I have the ability to give you a place that you can build memories in, dude, like, come on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
Like,
deep.
that's what it is. So anyway, that's that.
Varlo Apartments. I think it's in the future. I could see it happening. It has a nice ring to it. Or
Varlo Apartments.
Varlo Capital Management. I don't know what level of real estate you want to get into,
Could you
but
imagine? Could you imagine Varlo Apartments?
I mean, when I look at your sign back there on the wall, it looks like it's kind of this picturesque. I don't know. It could be Varlo Tiny Homes or something. Like you could have it working. I love the branding, by the way. I think it's great. Yeah.
That's funny, Varlo Apartments. I'm like, now that you say, I'm like, oh, there's a ring to it, you
Hey,
know?
Donald Trump did it with everything, and there's plenty of other brands that go out there and throw their name on anything that
There's
they can try
everything
to
like
make a move.
Varlo,
So
yeah, Varlo real estate. That's a trip, man. Yeah, dude.
Varlo Vacation Homes. I mean, there's like it just
Dude, it just
sounds good.
rolls. It just
It does
rolls.
roll.
It
Yeah,
rolls. It just
it's the two
rolls.
syllables. You can't pronounce it wrong. You're golden. You're
Oh
golden.
my goodness. Yeah, man. Yeah, now you got me thinking, man. I don't
Yeah.
know. We keep doing all these events. We might have to like get like some type of like Airbnb situation, like a Varlo property. management, real estate, something. I don't know. Like
Do it. Yeah.
we have a
What
lot
kind
of
of a,
roads.
what kind of events are you doing?
Oh, this year we're doing a lot, man. We're going to be at, so when I say this year, I'm talking about 2024,
2024.
but we have a lot, man. We're going to start off at Oceanside in April. We're going to be at Sea Otter Classic. We're going to be at Ironman Texas. We're going to do a number of Ironman events, and then we're also going to be doing a lot of cycling events this year.
Oh, sweet.
Due
Brainchild.
to something that we have coming on with RAI. So we
Nice.
want to
Okay.
have some more cycling intent behind us as a company, as a brand.
Good for you.
And then we also have like our brand community, which is Team Varlo. There'll be a number of like team activation events this year as well. So we'll have some stuff. We'll be, again, like I definitely believe in being visible and being
Sure.
present. And it actually, like you could probably say, you could argue that I'm gonna throw something out there, and there's going to be another person with another company that's going to hear what I'm going to say right now, and they're going to be like, wait a minute, and
Can I know who it is? I want to tag them
they're
here.
going to change. They're going to be like, change their business plan, right? They're gonna,
Yeah, yeah,
immediately
yeah.
when they hear what I'm going to say, they're going to go, wait a minute, we're going to change this up. But if you look at the cost of like PPC advertisement right now, and like what the cost is like per month, if you said, okay, hey, I want to be competitive in my space, and I want to spend X amount of dollars on PPC advertisement or lead generation advertisement. And this is a very business directed discussion, whatever. If you look at what that cost is per month, right? It is more than arguable enough reason to say, why don't I just go to an event once a month? I could actually go to maybe 2 events a month
Just to
versus
get that many eyeballs.
especially for the spend. Like if you're spending that amount on people to come to you, why not go to them?
Yeah, and you can craft the relationship a
and
little
you
bit more
can build
personal.
that relationship, and you can actually engage with people and actually share your experience on what your brand is, what your company is, and who you are, right? That goes so much further than sitting back and going, yeah, just, I'm paying for clicks or whatever people, it's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know. I do think the balloon on like the e-com balloon, that market of which actually like really inflated during COVID. Like all of a
Oh
sudden, like
yeah, just
all these companies were popping up, and everyone wanted like an
a
e-com
piece of
company.
it. Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you had this like huge rise in like advertising agencies and advertising costs for like e-com. That balloon, I think we're on the way to seeing that pop a little bit. And
Good.
you can see it by like the number of brick and mortar stores that are now starting to open, and a lot of the big box retailers that are going back to that model of brick and mortar, because you have to say to yourself, man, like if you're spending X amount in advertising a month, yet it can only be so much until you start asking yourself questions like, well, how much, if we had a property here and if we had like staff, and how much would it cost us just to run something, or how much would it cost us to set up like on-site activations at these geographic
Yeah.
locations?
Dude, I just had a crazy idea.
Varlo
So
agency, Varlo
so
advertising
so
agency.
so imagine you could do this maybe at Ironman events, but imagine, okay, let's do Ironman events because you're in triathlon. You buy, let's say, one Airbnb within 20 minutes of 5 race destinations that you really like. And
I already said too much, man. I got to stop saying so
no,
much.
no, no, here we go. Listen, hear me out. Hear me out. So you get these out. So let's say maybe one's in Kona, one's in Ironman, Texas, whatever. You have Airbnb. Whoever stays at that Airbnb, you strategically have gear that Varlo kind of has a part of the Airbnb. So you can build it into the cost structure of the Airbnb because people are going to be paying out of their mouth anyway to get to that place. And then you say, hey, like you can try out our race kit, or you can try out these da 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 at these races. And so you get people the opportunity to, like, I don't know, maybe you get a kit as a step pay while staying at this Varlo apartment.
Yeah, it would be, what, like, I think I like it, but it would have to be at like it would have to be at locations that that event is going to be there for X amount of time, right? There's like a long-term contract in place, and it needs to be a place where, now we're talking real estate, but it needs to be a place that can suffice as a real estate hub beyond just
Sure.
try and cycling, right?
Yeah.
But I thought you were going to say something else, which is truly, we actually do have our gears are always turning on how to be creative and dynamic as a company. And so there is something we're thinking like, ooh, what if we did this, right? And I won't say too much, but I will say this. I think everyone who owns a business should go back and look at what Nike did during the London Olympics. That's all I will say. That's all I'm going to say.
LA coming up 20. Are you thinking Paris or LA 2028?
London. I think thinking outside of the box in business is everything. And if you look at what I can't say too much, but
you can. We're not that big yet.
So one of the things that Nike did during the London Olympics is I think they didn't have the rights they didn't have like the partnership rights with the Olympic governing body or something like that for that Olympic year. But if you go back and you look at their commercials that they rolled out during that timeline of the Olympics, the London Olympics, one of the things they did is they said, okay, cool. We don't have the rights. We can't do anything with you guys. But what we're going to do is we're going to come out with a series of commercials using the word London. And they use the word London like you have to go back and just look at it, right? And it was a way to speak the message without taking the message, right? One of my rules in business is follow the laws, break all the rules.
Follow the laws, break the rules. I like it.
Yeah. They're all suggestions.
Yeah. Good deal, man. I have to ask just one more question. Actually. I'm sorry. So the reason I heard of Varlo because I was at Augusta, and I think it was Augusta, and I think Trevor was wearing a Varlo kit. Yeah. Trevor Foley. Mm-hmm. He was our very first episode ever. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got to know them. How did you get to know them? Like, how does that even work from like a business standpoint? Do you reach out to them on Instagram? Hey, we'd love to talk to you, get you in contract, wear our suit.
Yeah. How did Trevor, like you're talking, like how do we work with pro athletes?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah. It's really, it's not like, it's super duper not that like, complex, man. I mean, sometimes I'll shoot people a DM like, hey man, let's have a chat, would love to talk with you. Right. Yeah. And, or our office manager will reach out to them. It's really that simple, man. It truly is. Or we'll have people on our brand team that are connected with an athlete, and then it's, hey, you should talk to so-and-so and so-and-so, whatever. And then we link up, Yeah. But again, like I was such a big fan of the sport. I still am. First of all, I'm still a big fan of the sport, but yeah. I was such an obsessive big fan of the sport as a participant before Varlo that, you look at some of the athletes that are like Varlo athletes right now, like Cody Beals and like the Rach McBrides. Mm-hmm. I was like fanatic about those athletes before like Varlo, right? Like way, but like I was like, oh my god, like super duper geeky. Yeah. And so I remember talking to Rach the first time and trying not to like spaz out
your words, yeah.
Yeah, like I was like trying to hi, like try not to spaz out because I was such a big fan.
Yeah.
And same thing with Cody, And so Jason West is a really funny one. So Jason West, I remember when I said in September we turned on the Varlo switch, and then it was market before the spring of the following year. One of the people and so here's a fun fact. I went to like a Barnes and Nobles, and I said I'm going to buy a bunch of like triathlon magazines and running magazines. So I got the magazines and I would thumb through them to figure out who the chief editor was in the magazine. Okay. So I was like, okay, cool. So-and-so's chief editor. That's their email. I would go home, email them, tell them who I am, what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. Would love to set up a call with you. people would email me back and go, yeah, let's set up a call, let's set up a chat. That was like the marketing of Q4 2020, and how that was that simple. One of the people that interviewed me about the Varlo brand coming out, one was Kristen Jenny, who's part of Team Varlo now, amazing person, and the other person was gosh, forgetting her maiden name, but now Jessica West, who is just, before they were just dating, or they were fiance, now they're married. But it was Jason West's wife, Jessica, who I did an interview with, and we were talking, and she said, hey, if this Varlo thing ever really works out, like, my boyfriend, he's a triathlete, maybe you should talk to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, who's he? He's like, oh, his name's Jason. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, would love to talk with him, right?
Yeah.
And that was that, man. Like, and I think Trevor, there was like someone on Team Varlo. I don't remember, but but yeah, man, it's that simple. And I'm really proud of the fact that, like, with all of our athletes, it's like a friend relationship. It's like, it's family, definitely it's a friend relationship. It's a relationship of, like, I think Jason just sent me a text message, actually. He literally just did. I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow. We have to go do some wholesale stuff, and I think we're going to be meeting. Yeah.
Ask him when he's going to come on the podcast. I reached out to him through like 4 people, and I know he's super busy, but if he thinks it's funny and you think you would do that, you should do it.
I think we're having dinner tomorrow night, perhaps, or I think we're having breakfast Saturday. One of the two. I got to see what he said. And then, but either way, like, I'll mention it. I'll like, yo, South Hill, he was like asking
the annoying guy that keeps messaging you over and over. Yeah. And reached out to your manager. Yeah, that guy.
yeah, that guy. Yeah. That's
cool,
too funny, man. That's too funny.
Well, Saja, I don't want to take any more time. I know you got things to do. There is no time for you.
Yeah, right now. I gotta grab this stuff. My wife was texting me as well. I have to head home, hang out with the family before I leave for tomorrow. Just by the way, she doesn't ask about the 20, then double down to 40 grand anymore. That doesn't come up anymore. That's well behind us.
Yeah, good. Well, all the best and success. Looking forward to hearing how the future goes and viewing how the future goes from the outside.
Yeah. Thanks, Seth. I really do appreciate it, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I know that you're touching people, you're shaping the space. What you're doing is awesome, man. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and keep doing your thing, man. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you again so much to Jibowu for coming on and sharing so much of his story and being so vulnerable and candid about everything that he's learned in life. Just want to thank you guys also for listening to this episode to this point. If you're on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave us a comment. It really does help grow the channel and the podcast awareness. If you are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of those other ones, make sure to please give it a like and review or a follow if you're on Spotify. And you can also ask us questions on the Spotify platform, so check that out if you'd like to. All kinds of stuff in the show notes below about Varlo, and what they got going on. Make sure to check them out and their athletes that they're supporting. If you would like to join our newsletter, you can do so at the stupidquestions.show website. If you scroll all the way down, you can get that information there and join the newsletter where we do exclusive giveaways, hopefully newsletter stuff here relatively soon, and all kinds of other stuff. So I won't talk anymore. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one.